It's strange how life can throw you into a tailspin just when you're already on the ground. I remember that day vividly, how I felt like I'd been sucker punched in the gut. I just lost my job. The rug had been yanked out from under me and I was sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the ceiling, trying to catch my breath. My mind was spinning. What do I do now? How do I pick myself up after this? I was at my lowest, honestly. That's when I thought I'd hit rock bottom. My wife Lisa was supposed to be there for me then. She always said she'd be my rock. But that day I saw something that shattered that promise forever. I was wandering around the house numb when I decided to check the closet for some old clothes I'd thrown away earlier. Nothing unusual there, right? Just a typical cluttered closet. But as I reached for a hoodie, I caught a glimpse of something tucked behind her shoes, something that looked like a crumpled piece of paper. Curiosity got the better of me. I pulled it out and my stomach twisted. It was a folded-up note, but it wasn't just that. It was a printout of texts, and not just any texts. These were from her phone. I could see the familiar names and words, flirty messages, late-night plans, promises that made my blood boil just reading them. My fingers trembled as I unfolded the paper further. Some of the messages were from her, some from him, Jake, my so-called best friend. I read a snippet that made my chest tighten so painfully I nearly dropped the paper. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Think about you all day," she wrote. And his reply, "Me too. Soon we won't have to hide anymore." I could feel the sweat prickling at my temples. My hands went cold and my mind started racing. How long has this been going on? Did I miss signs? Was this the reason she was acting distant? All those little things I brushed off, her late nights, her secretive phone habits, they suddenly made sense. The worst part, I was already broken inside. I just lost my job, felt worthless, and this betrayal hit like a freight train. I remember clutching the paper so tight my knuckles turned white. My mind spun with questions. How could she do this to me now, when I needed her most? The betrayal was raw, sharp, like a slap to the face, but worse because it came from someone I trusted with all my heart. That moment I knew I couldn't stay silent. Not anymore. I had to figure out what to do, how to respond. I wasn't just devastated, I was furious. I looked at the messages again, and a cold determination settled in. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. This was the kind of betrayal that demanded a response. But I had no idea what that response would be yet. All I knew was that I'd seen enough to understand that my world had just crumbled and I needed to plan carefully. That's when I started piecing everything together. How long this had been going on, what I'd missed, and how I was going to make her pay. I knew I'd be the one to come out on top somehow. But for now, I just stood there, clutching that piece of paper, feeling like I'd been sucker punched in the gut all over again. And the worst part, I realized that I had no idea what's coming next. After I found those texts, everything changed in an instant. The house felt colder, quieter. My head was pounding and my stomach churned like a storm was brewing inside. I sat there on the floor, clutching that crumpled paper, feeling like I'd just been kicked in the chest. My mind was racing, trying to piece together how I could have missed all the signs. How did I not see this coming? I don't remember how long I just sat there, staring at the wall, feeling the heat of anger rising up. It was like I'd been hit with a wave of betrayal so heavy I couldn't breathe. My fists clenched, palms sweaty. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and above all, furious. For a moment I thought about smashing something, maybe her favorite mug or that ugly vase on the shelf. But I knew I had to keep my head. I wasn't going to lose control over this. Not yet. I remembered her telling me how much she loved me, how she'd never cheat. All those promises, all those little things I'd taken for granted. How could she do this? I kept asking myself over and over. And then I looked at the texts again, those innocent words she had written, so sweet, so intimate. And Jake's replies so full of desire and secrecy. The betrayal wasn't just a one-time thing. It had been going on for a while. That's what made it worse. I had to think fast. I needed a plan. I couldn't just confront her blindly. I had to be smart. I decided to gather more evidence. If she'd been sneaking around with my best friend, she'd slip up again. I needed to see more to be sure. That meant hacking her phone, digging through her stuff more carefully. I wanted to catch her in the act, or at least get enough to make her really understand what she'd done. But I also realized I couldn't just explode right away. That would make me look weak. I needed to be in control, so I started planning my move carefully. I'd wait. Bide my time. I'd find a way to get her to admit everything. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done, not just hear about it from me. I wanted her to know I knew, and I wasn't going to let this slide. I remember the cold sweat on my palms as I took a deep breath. You think you can just cheat and get away with it? I whispered under my breath. That anger was boiling over, but I kept it in check. I knew I had to be patient, I had to be strategic. I wasn't about to walk in guns blazing, no. I was going to catch her off guard. That night I sat in my chair going through her social media accounts trying to find anything else that could tip the scale, and I found more. Fake accounts, secret messages, even plans for the next meetup. Every new piece of evidence was like another punch to my gut, but it also sharpened my resolve. I was going to make her see what she'd lost, what she was about to lose. I kept telling myself I'd be the one to come out on top, that I'd turn this around, but deep down I knew that first I had to expose her, show her I wasn't blind. Still, there was that flicker of hope, hope that maybe she'd realize what she was doing and stop. But I wasn't counting on that anymore. I knew I had to act. So I started drafting my plan. I'd wait until she was comfortable, then I'd confront her with everything. I'd make sure she understood I wasn't some fool, that I knew her secrets, every dirty detail. And then I'd decide how I wanted this to end. The question was, how far was I willing to go? I didn't have answers yet, only a burning need for justice. And I was just getting started. The days that followed felt like walking through a fog. Every moment was tense, heavy with the weight of what I'd uncovered. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was going to slip up again, or maybe she was already planning her next move. I stayed alert, watching, waiting. My mind kept circling back to the evidence I'd found, replaying her secret messages and those little signs I'd missed before. It was like she'd built a wall around herself, and I was just starting to find the cracks. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at my phone, debating whether to confront her immediately or keep gathering proof. Every time I thought about talking, my stomach clenched tighter. I didn't want a drunken fight or an emotional outburst. I needed her to admit everything on her own in her own words. That meant I had to be patient and cold. I had to be the one with the upper hand. But then she did something that made my blood run cold. One afternoon, I caught her sneaking into her closet, clutching her phone like it was some precious treasure. I saw her glance around nervously, her cheeks flushing. I knew she was hiding something. I stepped closer, trying to act casual, but my voice was sharper than I intended. "Who are you messaging so secretively?" "I saw the texts," I said, voice low but steady. Her eyes flicked away for a second, but she caught herself. "It's nothing, just some friends," she muttered, trying to brush me off. "Friends," I repeated, voice rising. "Lisa, don't lie to me. I saw what you wrote. Do you think I'm stupid?" Her hands trembled as she tried to hide her phone behind her back. That's when I saw the flicker of guilt in her eyes. It was like a dam breaking. I took a step forward, my fists clenched tight. "Tell me the truth. Are you cheating on me?" She froze, then let out a shaky breath. "It's not what you think," she whispered, voice cracking. "Oh, really? Because I think you're lying right now," I said. My stomach twisted again, but this time I felt the fire of rage burning underneath. I wanted her to confess, to own up. I knew I couldn't trust her anymore, not after what I'd seen. And I wasn't going to pretend I could. She looked down, tears pooling in her eyes. That didn't make me feel any better. It only fueled my anger. I stepped even closer, voice cold. "You think you can keep me in the dark, but I know everything, and I want you to know I'm done pretending." She finally looked up, her voice barely a whisper. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I was lonely and he was there. It just happened." Hearing that made my jaw tight. I felt the sting of betrayal like a slap to the face. How could she say that? How could she betray me when I was already broken? It was like she didn't care about what I was going through. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. I wanted to scream at her, but I kept my composure. "I don't want to hear excuses," I said sharply. "You were supposed to be my wife, my partner. How could you do this right after I lost my job, when I was at my lowest?" She looked away, tears streaming down her face now. "I didn't mean for it to hurt you. I was weak," she admitted softly. That was the last straw. I knew then I had to decide what to do next. I couldn't just leave her, not without making her regret this. I had to make her understand that this wasn't just about betrayal, it was about punishment. She crossed a line, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. But I also knew I couldn't confront her blindly again. I needed to be strategic. I had no intention of just walking away. No, I wanted her to feel the full weight of what she'd done. And the best way to do that was to turn her own secrets against her. So I took a deep breath, feeling the cold sweat on my forehead, and started making my plans for the next move. This wasn't over yet, not even close. That night I couldn't sleep. The adrenaline from our confrontation still buzzed in my veins. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, tear-streaked, guilty, broken. On the outside, she looked fragile, but I knew better. I knew she had been sneaking around behind my back for who knows how long, and I'd be damned if I let her walk away unscathed. I decided I needed proof, more than just the texts I'd found. I had to know how deep this went, how many lies she'd told, and how long she'd been planning this. I remembered her passwords, the patterns I'd observed, and I remembered that she often left her phone lying around. That's when I started planning my next move. First, I got into her email account. I'd created a fake account earlier just in case, and I used it now to reset her password. It was surprisingly easy. Her email was linked to her phone, and I knew her security questions. Within minutes, I was inside. That's when I found her calendar. Hidden behind appointments for work meetings, I saw the real truth: secret meetups, hotel reservations, and even messages to Jake planning their next encounter. Every detail was there, laid out in black and white. My stomach clenched even tighter. This was real. She wasn't just flirting, she was actively cheating, lying, and hiding it all from me. I kept thinking how betrayed I felt, how I'd been so blind. I was low, broken, and now this. It felt like my guts were being ripped apart. But I wasn't done. I needed to take it further. I set up a recording app on her phone when she was out the next morning. I wanted her to slip up again, maybe catch her in the act, or at least record her admitting the affair. I knew it was a risky move, but I needed undeniable proof. I also arranged for her to have a work dinner that evening, which was actually her next planned rendezvous. When she left that night, my pulse was racing. I knew this was the moment I had to act. I sat in my chair, hiding the phone, listening as she slipped out the door. The apartment was silent for a few minutes. Then I heard the faint sounds of her voice, laughing, whispering. Then, the unmistakable sound of a door closing. I pressed record, my hands trembling slightly. The room felt cold, every nerve on edge. I had to keep my composure. I kept the phone running, waiting for her to slip up. I was tense, every fiber of my body alert, my ears strained for any sound. Minutes dragged by. Then I heard her voice again, quiet but clear. The unmistakable sound of her whispering, then the voice of another, Jake. They were talking about meeting at the usual place. I felt my stomach turn. This was it, proof enough. I knew she'd lied, cheated, broken everything we'd built. That night I sat back in my chair, replaying the recordings over and over. I'd caught her in her own words, in her own voice. She was planning her next step, and I knew she wouldn't see it coming. I had everything I needed now. Every lie, every secret, all laid bare. And I realized I'd be the one to decide how this ended. The next morning I woke up with one thought: she was done. Her world was about to come crashing down, and I was going to be the one to make sure of it. I had the evidence. I had the plan. All that was left was to execute it. I poured myself a glass of water, took a deep breath, and started mapping out how I'd confront her, publicly, decisively, and with no mercy. Because when someone betrays you at your lowest, you don't just walk away, you make sure they feel the pain they've caused. And I was ready to do just that. The day I decided to act felt like walking on razor wire. I knew I had everything I needed: the recordings, the calendar, the texts. It was all in place. But knowing that and actually doing something about it were two different things. Still, I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know. I had to make her face the consequences of her betrayal. That evening, I told her I had a surprise for her. She looked suspicious, her eyes darting around, probably trying to figure out what I was up to. I asked her to sit down in the living room, trying to keep my voice calm but firm. My palms were sweaty, but I kept my composure. I handed her a small envelope. "Open this," I said. "It's for you." She hesitated, then slowly took it. Inside was a USB drive. Her brow furrowed as she looked at me. "What's this?" "Just listen," I replied, my voice steady, "and then you'll understand." She plugged it in and the room fell silent as she pressed play. The first thing she heard was her own voice discussing plans, laughing, whispering. The recording I'd set up. I watched her face drain of color as she listened, every word catching her off guard. Her eyes widened, then flickered with guilt, then panic. When it was over, she looked up at me, her voice trembling. "You recorded me." "Yeah," I said, crossing my arms. "And I also found your calendar, all your sneaky meetings, the hotel reservations. You went way beyond flirting, Lisa." She was shaking now, tears streaming. "I didn't mean for it to get this far. I was lonely. I don't know what I was thinking." "Oh, you do," I snapped. "Because it looks like you planned this for a while. All those messages, the secret meetings, how long has this been going on?" "I don't know," she whispered. "Months." I was so stupid. I felt my jaw tight. "Months, and I lost my job and you just kept going." Her voice broke. "I didn't want to hurt you. I was desperate for someone who cared." I took a breath, trying to keep my anger in check. "Cared enough to cheat on me at my lowest. You should have told me. Instead, you chose to lie, to sneak around behind my back. That's not love. That's betrayal." She looked like she might crumble, but I wasn't done. I had to make her see the full picture, the damage she'd done. I pulled out the other evidence I'd gathered, the texts, the message logs. I pushed the phone toward her. "This is what I found in her phone, more proof of your lies," I said coldly. "All the plans, the secret messages, everything. You thought you could hide this forever." She looked down, her shoulders shaking. "I don't know what I was thinking. I'm so sorry." Sorry wasn't going to cut it anymore. I'd had enough of her apologies. I was done pretending. The pain was like a hot blade digging into my chest, but I forced myself to speak clearly. "You're not just sorry," I said loud enough to make her hear. "You're a cheat, a liar, and a traitor, and I don't want to see your face again, not after this." Her eyes filled with tears, but I was already moving. I grabbed the keys from the table and handed them to her. "Here, take your things. I want you out of my house by tonight, and don't come back." She looked at me, stunned. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," I said, voice hardened. "You crossed a line. I'm done. You want to betray me, fine, but I won't be part of your lies anymore." She nodded silently, clutching her purse. As she headed for the door, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. The betrayal hurt so much, but now I knew the truth, and I knew I'd be better off without her. Before she left, I handed her a small envelope. "These are your keys. Don't come back. And take this as a reminder, you lost me when you cheated. Never forget that." She looked at me one last time, her eyes full of regret. Then she turned and left, closing the door behind her. I stood there for a moment, taking a deep breath. My hands still trembled, but I felt a strange sense of clarity. I'd taken control again. I'd faced the betrayal head-on, and I'd come out on top. It wasn't easy, but I knew I'd be okay. Maybe even better. That day, I learned something important. Trust is fragile, and when it's broken, the only way to heal is to cut out what's bleeding you dry. And sometimes, the best revenge is simply walking away, knowing you're the one who finally took back your power. The days after she left were some of the quietest I'd experienced in a long time. The house felt emptier, colder without her footsteps or the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air. But oddly enough, it also felt lighter. Like I'd finally taken a deep breath after holding it for too long. I spent those days packing up her things, one box at a time. I left her a note on the door. "You lost me when you cheated. Don't come back." It felt good to finally be decisive, to reclaim some control over my own life after everything. I handed over the keys, locked the door behind her, and watched her drive away. That moment I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. Relief because I had finally shut the door on a chapter that nearly broke me. Emptiness because, well, love hurts. But I realized something crucial. I had survived it. Not just that, I had taken back my dignity, my self-respect. I sat in my living room, feeling the silence settle around me, and let out a long breath. I thought about all the red flags I'd ignored, her secretive phone habits, the late nights, the small lies I excused. I saw now how blind I'd been, how much I'd sacrificed to keep the peace. But I also knew I wasn't going to stay stuck in that darkness. This was the wake-up call I needed. Looking back, I see how it all unfolded. The betrayal, the evidence, the cold planning, the confrontation. And I understand now that the true revenge wasn't just exposing her or walking away. It was in reclaiming my power, my dignity, and my future. I felt a strange calm wash over me, like finally getting to exhale after holding my breath for too long. The worst pain I experienced was the betrayal itself, but the greatest lesson came afterward. Trust, I learned, is fragile, and sometimes you have to cut out what's toxic to save yourself. If someone betrays you when you're at your lowest, they don't deserve a second chance. I'd given her all my trust and she shattered it. So I chose to rebuild, better, stronger, wiser. Now I focus on my recovery. Getting a new job, reconnecting with friends I'd neglected, and learning to trust again, slowly, carefully. It's not easy and some days sting worse than others, but I know I'm better off without her. And I want others to understand this. Betrayal is a blow, but it's also a chance. A chance to take your life back, to learn your worth, and to move forward. So here's the truth I want to leave you with. If someone cheats on you when you're most vulnerable, don't beg for explanations or try to fix it. Cut loose. Walk away with your head high. Because the only real revenge is healing yourself and proving that you're stronger than any betrayal. And trust me, moving on is the best revenge of all.